Hi.
So welcome to we've got an overflow crowd, and welcome to the folks watching all over the world on Facebook Live. We have obviously an exciting event because the place is packed. We're going to hear about Abbott Kahler's incredible book, and we're going to hear about it from another great, incredible writer. What is your name?
I'm not telling. It's not about me tonight.
This is Patti Callahan Henry, who is in charge.
Yes, it is. Here I go. All right, y'all. Thanks for showing up. This is going to be so much fun. Abbott's new book is called Undone, and we are going to have a really interesting conversation because I have a lot of questions.
Good. Bring them on. Let's do it.
But let's start with this. Tell everyone a little bit about what it's about.
Okay, so Undone is a true story. It is about a group of people who fled Germany in the early 1930s when things were starting to fall apart in Europe and basically everywhere. It's right after the stock market crash. And they tried to find utopia on a remote Galapagos island. And in short, it goes terribly awry. It becomes sort of an adult Lord of the Flies. I also think it has an eerie similarity to And Then There Were None, my favorite Agatha Christie book. Yeah. You know, people go to this island, but not everybody leaves.
So that's the plot. But what is it really about at its heart? Like when because sometimes we don't know that when we're writing it, right? Like we're writing and we think it's about utopia. We think it's about this or that. When you were done, what was it really about to you? What rose up out of it?
To me, when I read the idea for the story, it sounded outlandish and bizarre, crazy twists and turns. But the core truth of it was that, you know, everybody, I don't care who you are, what your station in life is, where you've been, has at one time or another wanted to abandon their lives and start somewhere else and go somewhere where you could just have a fresh slate and your mistakes are all left behind and you know, everything is fresh and perfect and clean and new. And just that idea that you know, you are not, you know, tied to the mistakes of your past. You can always make something better and go somewhere else. But of course, it's not always going to work out that way.
I need everybody to know that her name is also Karen. So I keep wanting to say Karen.
I live right under Karen Abbott.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that too. Yeah. But she just got back from Japan. Like, less than 12 hours ago. She doesn't know what day it is. She doesn't know what time it is. So that she's even answering these questions.
If I just know,
I know, right?
I'm up.
So
I'm caffeinated.
It's so they pick up and they move. Yes. They want to build this utopia because things have been so bad. So let's tap into each character before we dive any deeper. Okay. Tell me about the first one. Tell me about Frederick.
So it starts with this a doctor, a Berlin doctor named Frederick Ritter. And he's a World War I vet. He saw combat. He was traumatized by what he saw in the war, and it changed him. And he went into medicine after this, and he had sort of progressive ideas about medicine. He was thinking, you know, talking about the healing powers of water and the power of the mind. He was, you know,
wait, that has a lot to do with your last book.
Yeah.
Because in your last book, there was a cult that had a whole thing with the power of the mind.
I think
I see a theme.
I know. But I would love to talk about that too, because I think writers always return to the same subjects in some ways. Yeah. But he decides that he's going to abandon civilization. He's going to pursue his dream of becoming a philosopher. He was obsessed with Nietzsche, which maybe probably wasn't surprise you if you read more about him. And he wanted to try out his ideas and his theories and live free from the burden of civilization on a remote Galapagos island. And he takes with him one of his patients, a 26-year-old woman named Dory Strach, who was suffering from multiple sclerosis. So every other doctor was like, you know, Dory, you're incurable. You cannot cure your MS. And he was like, no.
Water in the mind.
Yeah, it's all in the mind. If you choose to be ill, you will be ill. If you choose to cure your MS, you will cure your MS. I think she was trapped in a horrible marriage. She decided that it sounded like a great idea to go with Frederick to this remote island and see what they could make of themselves there.
And so introduce us to the next character. Let's talk about the Whitmer. He brings his whole family.
He does bring his whole family. So what happens, I mean, we'll backtrack into this a little bit, but things happen to get the word out that these two strange people are living on Floriana. One of the things that gets out is that Frederick had extracted.
Wait, slow down for a second.
Oh, sorry.
It's called what? Tell everyone what he's decided to call the place.
Frederick's home on Floriana Island is called Frito. It's a combination of his name and Dory's name, Frito.
So he's naming this whole utopian society Frito, but it's an island called Floriana.
Yes, it's called Floriana. So his personal home on there is Frito. But they're the only inhabitants. So basically Frito is the head, the castle of Floriana, basically. And word gets out about how eccentric he is. He even extracted all of his teeth and replaced them with steel dentures in the hope of avoiding dental problems on the island. He did not account for the fact that his gums would shrink and the teeth would not stay in, and that he and Dory would have to share the dentures occasionally.
Oh my God.
Which I don't think there's a grosser phrase in the English language than shared steel dentures.
I just got to chill.
Yeah, I know. I actually thought about wearing steel dentures a couple times on my book tour, but I do not have them. So I'm not going to ask you to wear my teeth.
Okay, so then Whitmer and his family show up.
Whitmer and his family hear about this. Heinz Whitmer was also a World War I vet, and he is married to, well, actually, they're not married. They left their spouses to be together, this woman named Margaret. And she's very sort of stoic and practical. And they bring along Heinz's son from his first marriage, a 12-year-old boy named Harry, who had been sickly and ill since birth. And they thought, oh, the tropical climate is going to be therapeutic and it will do the boy some good. And so they show up. And by the time they show up in Floriana, Margaret is 5 months pregnant. So they go to pay their respects to Dr. Ritter and Dory. And, Frederick is super annoyed. He's like, I did not leave my practice behind in Berlin to show up for this Hausfrau, deliver her baby. Like, get away from me. Dory was like, what is wrong with you? Why are you giving birth on this island? And Margaret was like, why are you quoting Nietzsche on an island? Like, yeah. So but they weren't on the same wavelength. But they decided to just try to live peaceably together and just sort of coexist and each keep to themselves. Although, Margaret did have an expectation that Frederick would attend to her birth. So,
and then the third showed up.
Yeah, dun dun dun,
the Baroness.
So the next person who shows up is called the Baroness. Her full name is like Baroness Eloise von Wagner Wehrworn Bosquet. I mean, it's a mouthful.
That's why I just said the Baroness.
Yeah, that's why she's called the Baroness in the book. She's actually capital B Baroness in the book. If anybody's ever heard anything about this story, it's kind of people hear that the Baroness was a self-proclaimed Baroness. She was a so-called Baroness, but she actually was an authentic Baroness. One of my researchers, I hired many for this book, traced her family lineage and determined that she was an authentic Baroness by virtue of her grandfather, who got the title during the Austro-Prussian War. Anyway, she shows up in Floriana with two of her lovers. She's married back home, not one, but two. Two of her lovers, whom she pits against one another. So they're already vying for her affections. There's already conflict in the air. She arrives in Floriana, and the first thing she does is, number one, washes her feet in the Whitmer's drinking water. And number two, announces that she's going to turn Floriana into Miami and build a luxury resort for American tourists. So you can imagine that all of these more privacy-minded people like Frederick Ritter and the Whitmers, they don't know what to do with her. She's automatically and immediately a problem.
So how big is okay, let's go backwards a little bit.
Okay.
You worked on this for 12 years.
Yeah.
Tell us the very first time you heard about it and what made you want to write about it. And then I'm going to ask, like, how big is the island? But yeah, let's go back to when you said, I want to write about that.
Yeah. So I was researching something else. This was about 12 years ago. And I came across, I was going through newspaperarchives.com as nonfiction writers
as
do.
We do.
and historical fiction writers. And came across this headline. I think it was in the San Francisco Examiner. And it was so bizarre. And I don't have it with me, but it basically said, is the doctor with his steel dentures plotting in paradise? Is the Baroness, otherwise known as Crazy Panties? What is she doing with her two love slaves? Did she drive one to his death?
What were you researching when you found this?
I was researching something about World War II. And it was kind of a record scratcher. I was like, did I just read, did I just read this? And I read it again. And I just was like, okay. And I spent the next couple days confirming that Crazy Panties was indeed worthy of that nickname. And she was. And I was like, this is the book I have to write. But I brought it to my publishers and they said, no, you write American history. You write American characters. We don't know what to do with this story. And so I, put my tail between my legs, wrote other books, but never forgot how much I loved this story and how I just thought it had to be told.
So for those who don't know, rattle through your nonfiction books. A fiction book came out last year, but let's talk about and what they were about to show why your publisher. One of the things that happens in publishing, and it makes us all crazy, is once you have success in a certain area, they don't want you to do something different.
Right.
And Abbott's books were huge in the American history field.
That's nice of you to say.
Well, they were. And so when you brought them this, they were like, no, stay in your lane.
Yeah, basically stay in your lane. So my previous nonfiction books have been written under the name Karen Abbott. I changed my name for a very creepy reason that we could get into later, but she's not creepy. The reason is creepy. The reason is creepy. Yes. The first book was about two sisters who ran the most famous brothel in Chicago in the early 1900s. The second was about the burlesque performer and literary icon Gypsy Rose Lee. The third was about female Civil War spies in the American Civil War. And the fourth was about America's most successful bootlegger, who was an inspiration for Jay Gatsby. And
Remus, right?
Yeah, George Remus, and the female prosecutor who helped bring him down. And this is my fifth nonfiction book. But you could see it was a very strong pattern of deeply American stories, I guess.
So from the moment you heard about it and got that thing, the chills down the back of your head or your arm, how long until you sat down to start writing about it? And what did it take to convince your publishing house?
So I finished my book, The Ghost of Eden Park, which was about George Remus, the bootlegger. And I was second book of a 2-book deal. And I was like, I have to do it. This is the time. So I begged the publisher of Crown, a division of Random House, who's my publisher, to come out for drinks. And I just said, please, 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 please. And I told him all the reasons I love this story, and not only because of the wonderful characters and the Agatha Christie plot twists and the sort of, the unsettling location and all of the wonderful things that make it so fascinating. But I brought up that point that this isn't an American story. This isn't a European story. This is a human story. And like I said, everybody has had that urge to throw everything away and start over. And I think that anybody would relate to that. And I wrote this book during COVID a little bit, and that even was amplified. Everyone wanted to get away on a desert island too during COVID, of course. So it just sort of drove the point home.
So how big was the island itself? And what years were this?
Yeah,
this happening?
So Frederick Ritter and Dory came in 1929.
Okay.
And it was a totally uninhabited island. It's in the southern part of the Galapagos, and people had tried to settle there before. They all failed. And the island has this sort of dark lore. It was the Galapagos' first penal colony. It was home to many pirates and marauders through the centuries. They would come there and sort of ransack. And the first inhabitant was a pirate named Patrick Watkins, who apparently walked around literally covered in vermin. There was a group of European.
So the island was never, quote, normal.
It was never normal.
Yeah, okay.
And as soon as Dory showed up, she thought she was being haunted by the island. So it's sort of. And I went there today, and everybody's just like, this island is haunted, even the people that are living there today. And it's a small island. It's I forget the exact square feet because I was doing it in kilometers too, and it was messed me up. But it's you could walk it. You could walk it in a day.
Oh, you can. Okay, you can. So if 3 people are showing up for a utopia, they're not going to be able to avoid each other.
No, it's they were maybe a couple hours from each other, but all like sort of you had to cross one to get to the other. If you were going to Post Office Bay or down to the shore where you had anything stored, you would necessarily pass the other person's habitat. So.
Okay, we're not going to give everything away, but part of how this begins is that a set of Smithsonian scientists stumble on some mummified bodies.
Yes.
So something went awry with the utopia.
Yes.
Let's just say that.
Something goes terribly awry.
Something goes terribly awry.
Maybe many things.
Many things. So I want to talk a little bit about why we believe we can even have a utopia. Like this idea that we could make something perfect.
Yeah.
And what did you come to when you were writing this about that idea and why these people thought that was possible? And how do you see that play out in other areas of life? Because I think even your characters in your fiction book it was a cult, and they were in many ways looking for their own utopia.
Yeah.
Right. And then the damage it does to other people by believing you have the answer to a utopia.
Yeah. I mean, I think you and I have talked a little bit about this, but basically what people are willing to give up in this quest for perfection that ultimately is futile and doesn't exist. And to me, I come from a family of gamblers. It's just it's people who are willing to gamble. Oh yes, the next hand is going to be the jackpot. You know, the next one I'm gonna bluff and I'm gonna win the big pot. You know, I've seen it firsthand, but it's kind of like that idea that I think it's also kind of American in some ways. The idea of the American dream, although these people were European, but kind of like the pursuit of something that is, might never come to you. You have no guarantees for it, but everything that you're willing to give up is vast and devastating in some cases, and certainly in this one.
Well, not only did they give up their, quote, real lives or regular lives, but they were willing to gamble their lives. Sickness, she was pregnant.
Yeah.
They were all willing to gamble, but there was something about all of them that didn't want to live a, quote, regular life.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't trust the medical system. They wanted to have a baby in a different way.
Yeah.
They wanted a couple lovers.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't want to live in, quote, real life, thinking they could make a better life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So did they eventually all get together and say, let's make one utopian society, or were they trying to make 3 separate utopias?
I think they were, especially Frederick and Dory, would have been happy having 3 separate utopias and never the twain shall meet.
Yes, yes.
But when the Baroness shows up, she makes that impossible. Heinz and Frederick actually have to put their differences aside.
So they combine.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, they actually start becoming friendly because it's kind of like oh my God, I thought you were nuts, but this woman. So, they kind of join forces and say, okay, as of course, also as the 2 reasonable men on the island, that we can start, just sort of corralling this woman. Who
now she was pitting her lovers against each other.
Yeah. Oh, and she was, she wants to build Miami. She does. She starts building hotels. She calls it the Hacienda Paradiso. She starts luring American tourists. She seduces everybody. She even invites, in the words of Margaret Whitmer, she invites Heinz and Frederick to her wigwam. It's possible that one or both of them accepted. And one American visitor called her hotel, quote, a festering sex complex.
Oh my gosh.
Just to give you an idea. And so there would be periods of easy peace where they thought, okay, she's gotten what she wanted to the extent, like maybe but no,
it just got worse.
It got worse and worse. I will say one of my favorite things about her, without giving too much away, is that she had this theory that if she liked to wound animals and nurse them back to health in the hope that they would remain loyal to her. And she
like a Munchausen by proxy, but for animals.
And she wanted to test this theory out on humans. Yeah.
Okay, that needs its own psychological.
I know. I often wish I could
study.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to talk about craft last because I know we're going to have a lot of craft questions. So let's talk about the Ron Howard movie.
Yeah.
That has
ruined my life.
Ruined your life. I'm going to let you say it. So Ron Howard has a movie coming out about this. And it's called Eden.
It's called Eden.
Instead of Eden Undone.
Yeah.
So tell us when you found out about that and how it changed your pub date and if at all it changed your story.
So very good question. So I was sort of recovering from my novel. My novel came out in January of 2024. I was just coming back from tour and trying to think about, taking a breather, thinking about what I was, going to do next, getting back into actually getting back into the Galapagos
that was 9
book.
months ago
Yeah.
when your novel came out.
Yeah. I mean, and I was getting back to the Galapagos and starting to think about that. And get the word that Ron Howard's movie is going to be coming out by the end of the year. And it's starring Jude Law, Sydney Sweeney, Ana de Armas, and Vanessa Kirby. And
who does Jude Law play? Frederick?
Frederick, of course
Okay.
he does. Let me just say that Jude Law is quite a glow up.
Yeah.
For Frederick.
Glow
yeah.
up. I've never heard that word before.
Oh yeah,
That's funny.
yeah. They got the Hollywood glow up, but so I just panicked because obviously Ron Howard has been obsessed with the story just as long as I have. This was a coincidental thing. If I had gotten my book done earlier, if the publishing gods had said yes to me earlier, perhaps Ron Howard would have optioned my book and gone off it. But as it stands, he was just doing this on his own. I was doing this on my own.
So you two were
In
doing this
parallel.
on parallel tracks
Yeah.
without one knowing about the other.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I found out, I was like, well, I have to come out before, because if I come out afterward, it's going to look like I just wrote a book really quick to just like dash, get on the tail of the
Instead
movie.
of spending 12 years
Yeah.
researching it.
But the consequence of that was that my initial pub date of May 2025, which, obviously next spring, had to be moved up to September 2024, which means I lost 8 months, 8 months of pre-publicity. And if anybody, Patti here can attest to the fact that that is a lot of time to lose. She said, you put it perfectly. I lost my runway.
You lose your runway when they crash it forward like that.
And it's sort of
making sure that the copy edits are right, making sure the right people gets in people's hands.
telling
sure the
booksellers
word gets
about
out.
it. Yeah. Just even, trying to get on anticipated lists, trying to get, Bookstagram and TikTok and all of that. I lost all of that. And so his movie premiered in September at the Toronto Film Festival. And nobody knows yet if it's going to be picked up for theatrical release or if it's going to go right to streaming. There's not even a trailer.
It didn't get great reviews.
It's getting mixed reviews. But I think part of that might be in Ron's defense that they don't expect that kind of movie from Ron Howard. Apparently it's super edgy. Apparently there is a full frontal of Jude Law at some point.
Oh, wow.
Because Frederick was known to walk around naked. Much to the dismay of many people.
I think that would make it get a good review, but anyway.
yeah, right.
All right.
But I'm waiting for any word on what the theatrical release is going to be, and my publisher says then we'll do another big push. But I'm just hoping now that people can hear about the book and read the true story before his fictionalized version, because I think from what I hear he actually tries to solve the murder, and it is an unsolved. It is an unsolved mystery.
Yeah. I do believe that ideas visit people at the same time.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that because I think that one of the most fascinating things about whether deciding to write a nonfiction book or a fiction book is this question of where do ideas come from?
Yeah. And you always talk about
that. I do, because
I
think it's fascinating. Sometimes it's a lightning bolt and sometimes it's just that tingle in the back of, back here. And you think, I always say it's a curiosity that we ignore at our own peril.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think that it visits people. Now, Elizabeth Gilbert takes it 10 steps further. She believes that ideas tap you on the shoulder, and if you ignore it, it goes and visits.
Oh, interesting.
In her book, Big Magic, she believes that ideas give you a chance, and if you dismiss it, it'll go visit you instead of me. But I also believe that things rise up at the same time, and that's what happened with you and Ron Howard.
Yeah.
And that you both dove into this subject matter at the same time, and it came to fruition at the same time.
Yeah.
I just think that's crazy.
Well, I sent him a book. I sent him a custom-made Baroness puppet. I sent a book to Sydney Sweeney, who's playing Margaret Whitmer, and I said, for Sydney, every bit as brave as Margaret, but so much hotter.
That's hilarious.
So I haven't heard from them. Nobody's posted it. So I hope they got it. I would hope that I'm trying to manifest an interview with Ron Howard. I think that would be amazing. So I'm trying to manifest to make that happen. But
so now it's out. All right, let's flip over. Let me check the time because I want to open it up in a bit too. Let's talk about how you've written fiction and nonfiction. In writing, we often talk about a planner, Are you a plotter or a pantser? I like the way Neil Gaiman says it. Are you an architect or a gardener?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So with nonfiction, of course, you have to outline.
Yes.
But nonfiction, even though it's based on fact, still has to have a narrative arc.
Yeah.
It can't just be this happened and then this happened and this happened
Right.
and this happened. There has to be this whole arc of narrative, a mystery solved or unsolved. How do you do it? Do you plot? Do you go by the seat of your pants? Do you have an inciting incident and just see what happens?
Yeah.
Talk a bit about your process.
So to go back to outlining, I am an obsessive outliner.
Are you? Okay.
I outline. I might take up to 9 months to a year to outline my book.
Wow. Even fiction.
No.
Okay.
No, just nonfiction. Oh God, if I tried to do it with fiction,
I was going to say, oh my gosh.
I did try to outline my novel like that, and I sent it to our mutual friend Jocelyn Jackson, another writer, and she was just like, "Honey, no, throw this away." But with my nonfiction, I have to.
Yes.
And my outline for this book was probably 135,000 words. And the finished book is like 85,000 words. So the outline is always considerably longer because that's what I do in the outline. This happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And then I have the sort of, the material. I have the blueprint. And then from that, I start taking
Do you look
scenes.
for the through line? Is that what you do? Do you say, I see, for example, in this book, what would have been the through line narrative arc for this once you had all the facts down?
Yes. I mean, and I know what I really like to do, it allows me to look at what I have and see where I can apply novelistic techniques while staying in the constraints of nonfiction.
Okay, so define novelistic techniques.
Foreshadowing, cliffhangers, setting a scene, building a world.
Yes. Okay.
All of that.
You see where that might go in the facts.
Yes.
Okay.
And I see where, I mean, luckily it's so funny. Usually, with nonfiction, the foreboding can get a little bit heavy handed. Like you could be like, he did not yet know that, George Washington was around the corner. Yeah.
The gun was under a spotlight on the table.
Yeah, exactly. But with this book, Dory Strach, who wrote a wonderful memoir that was also like a bunch of lies in some places, she did so much foreboding for me. Well, that's a whole other.
That's a whole other subject.
Thing. But she did so much foreboding for me that I didn't have to do any. And she would be like, even the way that the palm trees waved made me think that murder was around the corner. And like, I would put that in there. And my editor, she was like, I love Dory, but you can lose about 90% of her foreshadowing.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So I didn't even have to do it in this book. She did it for me.
Okay.
But there were places where, you cut off a certain chapter and you pick up somebody else's point of view at a certain time, cliffhangers. So that's the kind of thing, once you have the facts assembled, you can really start picking it apart. And it's a puzzle piece, just moving to where you could see the narrative and where the stakes should rise and where something should be resolved and where should be explored.
What would you say the through line is in all of this? I would say, I'll say it from a reader's perspective, what it means to try and find utopia.
Yeah.
Like, why would someone do that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of it. And sort of, to me, there was such an interesting juxtaposition between the American explorers who became very important to these German exiles. One of them, George Allen Hancock, who, if anybody's familiar with Los Angeles, owns the La Brea tar pits, the oil-rich tar pits. Hancock Park is named after his family. He becomes their confidant. So I found, never before published letters where they're just like, Captain Hancock, you know my soul better than anyone else. I wish I could tell you what's going on here. Please come in person. I can't write. I don't have any proof of it, but I need to tell you, this kind of thing. And to me, it was sort of also watching them unravel. The sort of here we are searching for a utopia, and what happens when you're not only failing to achieve utopia, but it's extreme isolation, where you have no, you have really no contact with
reality.
The outside
probably
world.
starts to feel a little fuzzy.
Yeah. And if you could just sense them losing their grip, and it was kind of almost like a just a slow motion unraveling of these people's psyches.
Ooh. I get a kind of, I wish that he had used your book
for
the movie, and you haven't seen it yet.
I have not.
Okay.
No, I'm dying to see it. Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to go over because I want to let you all ask questions. So Jake, you wanted to say something before we opened it up for questions?
I do.
Oh gosh.
I'm going to change what I was starting to say. This is the most insightful conversation. This is amazing.
And I have so many more questions, but I don't want to waste everyone's time.
I've read the book, but I want to go write a book. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And you students out there, I know you want to get to work. I want to thank these two amazing writers for their books and for this conversation and for the entertainment. And the announcement I want to make to the folks watching around the world that all this is about Eden, and that is merely the facilitator. But she has a book coming out next year. It's coming out in March the 18th. And the title of her book is The Story She Left Behind. And it is historical fiction based on a mysterious writer. It is based on a true story. The book comes out on Tuesday, March 18th. However, those of you who would like to come to Alabama on Sunday, March the 16th at 3 o'clock, we will be hosting a pre-publication party, and you can get the first copies of this book. Those of you watching around the world, go to alabamabooksmith.com. And one more special surprise, my last advertising. We don't carry paperbacks. We only carry signed hardbacks. But on that day, March 16th, we're going to have every title Patti has in paperback, and she will sign them, and you can pre-order starting now. Thanks to those of you watching.